Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1, Episodes 17 through 21. This is with the Green with Evil story arc. So, we come to these 5 episodes, and there is a number of debuts. There's to be Scorpina that debuts, there's to be Tommy that debuts, there's to be the Dragon Zord that debuts, there's to be the Dragon Dagger that debuts. So, we come into me to have gone on and talked about Green with Evil on a prior review because I had naturally assumed that I would go on and cover episodes 11 through 16 and then also the 5 episodes of Green with Evil as well. And so I went on and I prattled on about Green with Evil on that previous review. And so if you want my thoughts of kind of early either issues or things that I kind of thought of within with Green with Evil, check out that other review. I'm not trying to clickbait people into 2 videos. I'm just saying that I had made a mistake and had an assumption that I could throw all these things into one video, and it didn't happen. So, with that said, there are a number of debuts here, and Scorpina has a very unusual thing about her, where the very first time you end up seeing her, she just, and then walks away. And I'm like, alright, that made no sense. And then we also go on to have at one point that, like, every time we are to, like, seemingly, figure out how to bring Scorpina into the fold of episode, we unusually have this boulder that is rolling. And then we have these scorpions that are either kind of zoomed in on camera or are to be somehow placed upon this boulder or this rock. And I am just like, okay, that is such a strange way to, I guess, either symbolize the character or to just present, like, okay, this character is coming. And also, eventually, we have like 2 different Scorpinas. We have the Scorpina that looks like a normal woman, and then eventually, when she becomes giant within these episodes, like, we have a much more uglier version of Scorpina. And so, moving on, let's talk more about Tommy. So, Tommy, the evil Green Ranger, or the eventual 6th Ranger within these 5 episodes, which of course, at some point later on of the story arc here, we do get Tommy, who is to have some redemption and realize that he can choose now with the power that he still holds on to join the Power Rangers, and so he does. He's given a communicator, and he is to be given the title of 6th Ranger, and Zordon is to be talking about the prophecy, or whatever, legacy, or whatever has been foretold, and they are going to finally get the 6th Ranger. It's very weird. But before that, we also go on to have a lot of teasing between the fight of Jason and Tommy. And with also characters like Goldar and Tommy just being a lot of talk, but at least Tommy does go on and does, within these episodes, destroy the command center and go on to hurt characters like Alpha, or make characters go away like Zordon, or also we just consistently throughout these 5 episodes play the Where is Waldo game for a number of characters. We go on and are to find out that Jason is missing, and we have to take so many times to say the word Jason within these 5 episodes that eventually I came to forcibly put him down in my notes is he who is always named, just because he is to be the most talked about within these 5 episodes, because they're desperate for the rest of the Rangers to find their leader. And then after the goal is to finally have found Jason, then they're like, okay, now we have to find Zordon. And so Alpha ends up hitting all the buttons that Alpha can on the consoles that are to be in front of Alpha to try and get Zordon back. To where even Jason at some point in the episodes is like, Alpha, do something! And like Alpha is just like, like, what do you want me to do? Kind of thing. That's what I would have said. Like I'm like hitting every buttons that I think that I could try to get Zordon back. And then also while Alpha is to further try to get some kind of dialogue with Zordon, eventually pinpointing where Alpha can go on to get to Zordon. We then just have Tommy that comes back. It's like, well, like you guys tried to get this guy back. Well, I'm going to make sure that he's gone forever. But then again, in trying and doing that, like we have to realize that Zordon is a staple, that he's been a character up until the point of Power Rangers in Space. So really, like, there's a lot of things that just kind of defeats, in my mind, like the prequel of all of this. But then also, it's kind of fun to say like Tommy tried to get rid of Zordon before Power Rangers in Space did, and that's kind of a funny thing to think about. But so anyways, like there also was a time in the comic books where they also try to get rid of Zordon as well, and that kind of creates for an interesting, just kind of where is Waldo of that story in the comic books. But I think that happens somewhere within Shattered Grid. So once we go on and there's to be a hinting that Zordon could be found, they then are like, okay, like let's focus on the Green Ranger. To where within these 5 episodes, they go on and consistently fight against him, which of course is a losing battle. And Jason ends up getting obsessed about the Green Ranger. And we then go on to having, since Tommy, or since the Green Ranger had been in the command center numerous times now, Alpha is to have some ability to be able to figure out who the Green Ranger is through these computers. And when it is to finally get revealed to the Power Rangers via this viewing globe who the computer thinks the Green Ranger is, the Rangers are to go on and be all in doubt of like, wait a minute, there's no way that this is to be Tommy. This can't be true. And in my mind, I am to go on and say, like, Tommy is a stranger to all of you people. Why are you going on and assuming that you know this character, like, so well? But then also, we would go on and have Tommy, who is to be such a vicious, like, douche to a lot of these Rangers. How can you not go on and assess that Tommy is to be somehow, maybe if you do know Tommy, different than who he was? And then also they try to rationalize the whole, well, like the putties never went after him when Jason and Kimberly were fighting them off. And when you honestly look at the clip, Tommy is like a million miles away from Kimberly and Zach. Like the way that they show how far away Tommy really is, like the putties would not probably deem it worth it to walk all that far just to attack Tommy when they have Zach and Kimberly right then and there. But yeah, but like that's the one thing that also kind of bothered me about how they had to go on and consistently go back to, well, like, the putties didn't go on and attack Tommy, so really he has to be evil. That's what has to make sense with it. But like, I can see like their detective brains at work trying to surmise or justify through the episodes of prior, like how Tommy seems shady, and it seems that um, per every other time, like situations are to be different um, when around Tommy. So, especially with also uh, Jason mentioning how he was to go on and talk to Tommy, and then he disappeared, and then Kimberly is like, "Well, hey, like, then Tommy lied to me." Tommy said that he waited for Jason and he never showed. So why had Tommy lied to Kimberly? Because Kimberly has to worry about Tommy and has to go on and be the center of the world as Tommy is to go on and make fun of her and sarcastically like destroy her in that manner. Also, I thought it was funny how Tommy turns to Kimberly and he tells her, it's like, well, I'm a big boy. I thought that was hilarious. Maybe during that time period, like him just saying the words, I'm a big boy, like it sounded cool then, but looking back on it now, like it just doesn't sound anything more than just kind of funny. But then also, like, who knows what the actual original scripts were to actually have been for these episodes, and maybe they adjusted or changed it, or maybe how Tommy was to go on and kind of maybe ad lib through maybe some of these things to make things better or whatever. At the end of it all, it just creates for a lot more fascinating television. And then also, the previous 11 through 6 episodes are also really good, with the exclusion of that genie episode. There is something else going on beyond the genie episode that is to be the whole body swapping thing, which, of course, is to be a good part of that episode, but that genie thing just makes it like the worst when it comes down to like the effort that they put into like the fighting scenes, like weren't there at all. But anyways, with that said, I think it's about time to just go into full on spoilers about this so I can furthermore break these episodes down. And then I also feel like I've gone on to repeat myself already in a number of situations within prior review. So if you're checking out that video and then you're checking out this, you're like, man, this guy is very long witted and loves to hear himself talk. And no, I don't. I really don't. But then again, also, I care and I want to go on and I want to really figure out a way to just have something out there and kind of also exhaust um, everything that I have to say about these episodes to kind of therapeutically get them all out. So, with that said, let's go on and let's break down these episodes. And I'm going to have to probably pause this video to get my notes out because I didn't plan that ahead of time. So with that said, let me pause here. Let me go and fully break down every single one of these episodes, and maybe there might be a little bit more within my notes that either might sound repetitive from anything that I've said before, or also maybe brand new. So with that said, let me pause here. I will be right back. Okay, so this, of course, is Green with Evil Part 1. At certain points, I will have like dedicated in my notes when there, of course, the part two, part three, part four, part five to kind of just transition here. And often the episode transitions you, anyways, because every single time it'll let you know that this story is to be continued because it's a story arc thing. Which, in all honesty, I feel that logically, like, I don't think it needed to tell us that there was to be a to be continued, that this story was going to continue, because regardless, I feel that these episodes were good enough to where people would be like, man, I want to check out next week and I want to see what happens. So, uh, this, of course, is be as per usual, spoil time, spoil time. It's about that time we get to spoil these episodes. So, the very first part one here has us at this martial arts expo that looks like the youth center, but like it seems to be this karate tournament. And so Jason is getting a pep talk from the Rangers and notices his competition, which of course is the new guy in school, Tommy, who just bizarrely appears now. So we have Jason sizing Tommy up, and then we also have Rita, who off in the distance is also sizing Tommy up. And Rita is just so happy that Tommy has come into the fold of these episodes because she is to turn to her henchmen and be like, well, hey, like, I think this guy is perfect for the Green Ranger. And the other lackeys and henchmen, like Goldar, are like, well, yeah, like, it makes sense. Having them beat down on one of their own, and also because he's a teenager, and also with him being yet another ranger to go against them. Again, it is like how I said in the previous video, it is more of a reflection back at them, and it is a much more mirror match situation that I much more enjoy rather than the Power Rangers facing off against just the normal day to day monster. So we go into this fight here between both Tommy and between both Jason. And oddly, when looking in the background, I noticed that Jason and Tommy's name is on the scoreboard. I'm like, that would never happen in any kind of environment like this, that they would specifically have the people's names on the scoreboard. But I get it. It's to really just to help the viewer understand the scoring of what's going on here, to know that Jason and Tommy are kind of evenly matched. When by the end of this fight, it seems that at first Tommy is going to win, but then Jason figures out a way to come back, and then there is a draw of 4-4. And so Jason then walks off and is like, well, hey, yeah, I didn't really win. It's like, well, yeah, but you didn't really lose either. So Kim looks on at Tommy as immediately once she's seen him first, this is almost like love at first sight kind of thing. And Trini also is noticing that Kimberly's looking at Tommy and she's like, well, hey, like, he does look good looking, doesn't he? And Kim's like, well, yeah. And Trini's like, well, like, maybe we'll see him at school the next day because he's the new kid in class for some goofy reason. So, at Angel Grove High the following day, we have Kim and she's at her locker, and Bulk and Skull want to help her with her books. Kim immediately says no to Bulk and Skull, and Bulk and Skull are just still just kind of push the subject of like, well, hey, no, like, let's do this for you, because again, we want to butter you up so we can still talk about that double date that we've gone on and said I don't know how many times now that we kind of want this to happen. And so Tommy behind Bulk and Skull is to remind the two of them what Kimberly had said. like saying like she said no, to where Bulk and Skull are just like, who is this guy? And so they turn around, assuming that like whoever that they're gonna face off against is just some pushover, and instead Tommy just starts to do a number of these like karate poses and this and that, and shows an intimidation factor that has Bulk and Skull just being like, yeah, I'm leaving. So as Bulk and Skull leave, Kim goes on and it's a look at Tommy. It's like, oh, like that was the guy that like I was looking at and oogling eyed before. And so Tommy and Kimberly introduce themselves, and so Kimberly is like, well, hey, like me and my friends kind of hang out at the youth center, so hey, would you like to just kind of hang out with us? Like it kind of felt like Kimberly was trying to say like, well, like how about you and me kind of hang out, but it also sound like, well, like she usually hangs out with her friends, but like yeah, like there is like, is this kind of a setup for a date? Like is she just saying that like, well, hey, how about you kind of be like a part of my friend group or whatever? Like not quite sure. So we transition to Rita, and she's call upon the sixth power coin and needs to go on and test whether Tommy can go on to uh, earn this sixth power coin without any help from Rita, and to see if he's worthy. So Rita has to go on to realize that she has to take putties and attack Tommy with them so he can earn becoming a evil ranger, while he of course is still just regular Tommy. So we then go on to have Tommy face off against the putties all on his own, just kind of walking through the streets, finding this dark alley, and to be faced with these putties. And Tommy's like, well, why is this me that these putties are going after? So we have Tommy here go on and do some very interesting like throws within combat, and we also see that Tommy within his style like is very aggressive overall when we get to the Sentai footage, or once we just have Jason David Frank attacking these putties. So but there's some unique throws that Tommy does here, and then also we have the garbage lid that he goes on and has the putty like punch the garbage lid, and it kind of bends and folds, and then also Tommy flings the garbage lid like Captain America, and it hits one of the putties. So Tommy decimates these putties because of course he does, and Rita appears to then be like, okay, well, like you've earned your stripes, kid. So like, let's teleport you out of here to turn you into the Green Ranger, like I had planned. And she knew that Tommy would go on to make it past this trial anyways. So Tommy ends up in Rita's lair where he bizarrely cocoons himself and then breaks out of this cocoon. And the weird thing about it is we obviously see here that there is some like Sentai footage to be stolen from, because when the evil Green Ranger rises up from its cocoon, we at first see like these Asian eyes, but then we all of a sudden see Jason David Frank's eyes, and we would also have assumed that how the Green Ranger breaks out of this cocoon, that we would see the actual Green Ranger morphed, but instead we see Jason David Frank. So we go on to then have Tommy be given his power coin and he grasps it in his hand, and Tommy bizarrely smoke morphs, and we of course end up seeing the cloth shield, and we realize that this is original American footage, or wherever the heck they filmed Mighty Morphin Power Rangers at that time, because I know at a certain point it consistently was filmed in New Zealand uh, for a lot of the later seasons. And then also, like, there's a lot of complications about filming in New Zealand when trying to do like crossovers and a bunch of other things. But so that's why I'm kind of curious where eventually they're going to go on and film Power Rangers at some point, based on it's been consistently filmed in New Zealand. Are they going to keep that same legacy or whatever there? Who knows? But anyways, at the command center, we have Alpha and we have Zordon, and they take the wrong time to decide that uh, Alpha is going to recharge Alpha's self, and Zordon is going to go into a meditative state. And if anybody is not to know much about meditation, reasonably, like, that is to just kind of turn your brain off and kind of just give some kind of simulation that you are sleeping, but it's to not actually be anything but you're still technically awake. So we would go on to have Alpha recharge and Zordon meditate, and that leaves the Green Ranger to break in to the command center because he is to have his power coin enabled to do so. And so, like, weirdly, they set up that the only reason why Tommy can break into the command center is because he has his power coin. But then in later times of just Power Rangers, I feel like they have to forcibly go on and retcon that anybody can eventually just kind of break into the command center. But still, so the Green Ranger makes his way to the command center, putting a disc, as if this is like Love Jams '07, into the back of Alpha, and that is to create a virus going into Alpha, which even when Alpha gets the disc removed, Alpha is to be somewhat functional for a brief amount of time, and then Alpha will shut down again. But also, with the discs, Alpha's memory will get erased of what it all happened. So, anyways, but when the Green Ranger puts the disc into Alpha, it kind of shuts Alpha down. So Zordon is looking at the Green Ranger because he has come back from his meditative state and is trying to figure out who this person is to have broken into the command center the way he has gone on to do. And he's like, oh, you must be Rita's Green Ranger, and you must have a power coin. And so there's a lot of justification of why Tommy is to go on and do what he does, which I've already kind of summed up here already. So Tommy then is to have this back and forth long winded dialogue between Zordon which he does this more than once. So, Tommy, of course, his goal, or the Green Ranger's goal, is to start to pull apart these consoles and rip and tear and try and destroy Zordon in a way of which that he can't possibly come back, because it would be too much work to uh, put all of these wires back together to then try to retrieve Zordon. But it seems with the patience of Billy, Billy is so easily to be able to figure all this out and be able to fix all these consoles later on. But still. So Tommy destroys everything he can get his hands on, and the command center loses Zordon as he is to desperately plead, like, oh no, I'm losing my power from this dimension. Oh, yeah. So the Grey Ranger calls out that he has destroyed Zordon, and the Rangers are next. So Tommy has right out of the gate, like, already won in some capacity against the Rangers without them even knowing. Basically, killing off their mentor and also their secondary mentor, which is technically Alpha. And because recently, when Zordon isn't there, they just have to have Alpha to come to. But so we transition to Rita finally seeing real success and wants to keep her momentum going because Rita is finally going into long term plans. Whereas before, Rita would just kind of fling monsters out there and hope for the best, which eventually, like, not well thought out plans will lead to not well thought out achievements. So, but if anything, like I said here, so Rita wants to keep her momentum by leering the Rangers out by making Goldar giant. Because eventually, Rita's next plan is that she wants to have the Rangers go into their Megazord, and she is to go on and cast a spell upon the sun to then have an eclipse, and then there's a whole plan about that, which they end up talking about more than once throughout these 5 episodes to reiterate that plan. But so Jason, Zach, and Billy are all cleaning the rad bug because at some point I'm sure we're gonna have to use the rad bug again. Um, because so often within these episodes we have gone on to need to use the rad bug because teleportation wouldn't work, or communicators wouldn't work, or something, of course, with the command center would just malfunction and what have you. So Kimberly ends up making her way, and I think like Trini is also with her. Kimberly ends up telling the guys that she was stood up by Tommy. Oh well, she was rejected. So Alpha ends up calling the Rangers, and the communication between Alpha and the Rangers is very distorted, or very echoey, or very repetitive, because Alpha cannot go on and have much dialogue because Alpha is malfunctioning. So the Rangers go on to be like, well, like, we seemingly like can't go on and have a bit of dialogue of what's going on with Alpha, so we might as well see what's going on with the command center by getting to the rad bug and making our way flyingly there. So the whole time that they're in the rad bug, they're very concerned with Alpha and why Alpha sounded the way Alpha did, amongst just other things. Like they're speculating and questioning a number of things, but it's like, well, hey, like let's wait till we get there to just see what's going on. So as the Rangers finally go and make their way to the command center, as the rad bug kind of just falls in to the command center at certain points where we see it in the footage, the Rangers are to look at the chaos, which is to be what was their command center, noticing all the damage of the consoles around them and how Alpha can't seemingly put one sentence together. Billy assumes there has to be some virus that has corrupted Alpha's systems, and eventually goes on to notice the disc within Alpha's back and pulls it out. So the Rangers also notice that Alpha, within the fishbowl that we are to have called him to be in, like has disappeared. He is gone. So once Billy goes on and takes the disc from Alpha's back, it seems that temporarily Alpha is functioning. So, but again, Alpha is to have a loss of memory and or loss of memory banks. So Alpha has no idea what had happened to the command center uh, because of the problems of Alpha systems. So the Rangers are forced to, like, with all this carnage around them, look at the carnage going on at the viewing globe, finding out that Goldar is huge and is destroying Japanese environments. So it's okay. Like, they don't need to go on and really need to just mess with Goldar. He's not even doing it in Angel Grove. He's doing it in Japan somewhere. It's okay. So Alpha goes on and tells the Rangers, like, well, hey, you guys need to leave. You need to take care of Goldar. And hey, like, while you guys are gone, I'll figure out a way to retrieve Zordon. So the Rangers morph and they make their way out of Command Center. And they are to be met by putties. The Rangers try to face off against those putties, and of course they do. And then, of course, they call upon their Zords. So Goldar ends up breaking this mountain because, of course, he does. Uh, Goldar distracts the Megazord and is just kind of hugging on to it. And with Goldar distracting, of course, the Megazord, that leads all the time in the world for Tommy to come in and him just deciding to just quite easily jump into the Megazord and punch and kick all of the Power Rangers without of it and have them go flying out of the Megazord. So, and uh, that part of the episode was freaking sweet. Just so iconic, just so like, yeah, like finally we have it to where like a situation that is really catching the Rangers off guard, and then also when they are to turn around, we would go on to have like Tommy who's like, "Long live Empress Rita," and then he punches all the Rangers out of the Megazord. So, uh, so as the Rangers are to one by one, or excuse me, are to make their way out of the Megazord, now Tommy is to go on and need to face off against the Rangers and fight them. So the level of combat here is so much more aggressive because, of course, the Rangers are this time around not fighting a monster that can either barely see or hear or even breathe or anything. So, but then also, I'm sure the Rangers within their helmets can, like, it's hard for them to see, it's hard for them to probably breathe, and also, like, think of the weather elements as well. Like, we go on and through certain episodes, like we're seeing the putties just like drenched in sweat with their costumes. So when looking at the Power Ranger suits, like I'm sure there's a number of cases where like the stunt doubles or whoever are just like they are sick from kind of doing all of this combat. So there are parts of this combat where we see that like Tommy takes his blade blaster and chucks it and hits Tommy's chest. We have Tommy that like for his legs like kind of jumps onto Trini's shoulders with his legs and then grabs onto Tommy's head and flips the both Trini and Billy. And really, for any time that any of the Rangers are to step up to Tommy, they are to regret that decision quite easily. So, uh, Tommy takes this kind of attack that I would kind of surmise is like the Street Fighter's Hadouken, or maybe that's Dragon Ball Z. I'm not quite sure, but he takes this energy blast and he chucks it to the Rangers, and they of course get annihilated by this energy blast. Which I'm like, why is it that none of the other Rangers like did that kind of attack? Like, if Tommy has this ability, why don't they? But so back at the command center, Alpha is crying for Zordon as the Rangers return, needing answers from Zordon of who this Green Ranger is. And Alpha, by this time, is to just finally break down and shut off. So the Rangers continue to realize that they are all on their own for the first time in a number of episodes. But really, like, for me to finally say that Alpha and Zordon, like, you question how valued they actually are, but with these Ranger characters, it seems that they always have to turn to them for answers because logically, there is some parts of the script that they didn't read. So, so yeah, uh, so with that said, like these characters are like somewhat mother or father figures to them, and so without them there is no guidance. So the end of this episode is to just have the Power Rangers turn to the viewing globe because that's all they have left to know what's going on in the world. And we just have Tommy standing tall, victorious, and the Rangers are just like, like how did things get to this point? And we of course get the to be continued because this is a story arcing now. So part two. The Rangers summing up their anger uh, towards the Green Ranger and the loss of their mentor, and not understanding who this new Ranger is. So, we also have the Rangers, they're just like, well, how is it that whoever came into this command center like knew how to destroy it so well? And with that kind of question, I was just like, yeah, like really, like you can just surmise that anybody could have just gone in and pulled and ripped every single thing possible, and it's like, well, that worked. Like, I don't know why Kimberly has to come to that conclusion of like, man, whoever came in here like knew what they were doing. But also, you can surmise that like Tommy is working through Rita, so maybe Rita with her spells just kind of like lended some bit of knowledge to Tommy because maybe Rita knew something about the command center and how it functioned. I don't know. That was a weird question to kind of throw in there. So As Alpha is to have gone on in the previous episode to have shut down, we then have both Billy and Trini trying to work to make Alpha functioning again. And so we see Billy, who's trying to fix Alpha, and Trini is looking on and telling Billy, it's like, well, are you harming Alpha? And Billy's like, oh, no, no, no. Like, since Alpha is technically a robot, like, Alpha won't feel a thing. So, when Alpha seems to be okay again and seemingly operational again, Alpha then turns to Billy and Trini and calls them dudes and dudettes again, which kind of lightens the mood and kind of brings some comedy into this dire situation, and I liked that. But also, like, Alpha states that, like, her memory banks are to just kind of be like erased, but how is it that Alpha remembers the whole thing about dudes and dudettes? Maybe uh her memory was to, or Alpha's memory was to just reset and go back to some kind of part of her memory where in prior episodes she called the Rangers dudes and dudettes. I don't know. But moving on, even with Alpha back, Jason still is focused on what's left to recover from their hard loss. Rita's next goal is a Sword of Darkness. So here's the goofy thing. So we end up having, realistically, the Dragon Dagger be such an iconic weapon and ends up being the toy that they go on to sell numerous times over. And yet, throughout a bulk of these episodes, we end up putting together this whole other weapon called the Sword of Darkness that they end up rarely going on and actually selling just because of how, in all honesty, just kind of weird it looks. But then also, like, how could they have gone on and really just rationalize just selling a sword to people? But again, uh, in certain action figures, there is actually the Sword of Darkness, as well as also the Dragon Dagger that appears in certain action figure sets, which I think I eventually went on to uh, collect the action figure that had one of those, just to be able to get like an action figure that had something interesting. But anyways, so we come to find out that the Sword of Darkness is to be Rita's next goal to achieve getting that. And so the Sword of Darkness is to have the ability to keep Tommy under Rita's thumb and to keep him controlled by her. Weirdly enough, like when eventually the Sword of Darkness is destroyed, then Tommy seems to completely have stopped being evil and then comes back to his normal self, which is just kind of weird. You would think that Tommy would still be evil, but he is to not be so. So I guess all of the Sword of Darkness had like just channeled that that evil within Tommy, and then when it gets destroyed, so does the evil within Tommy. So Finster, when talking to Rita about the Sword of Darkness, is to again talk about the Nasty Knight here and how the Nasty Knight had gone on to have the Sword of Darkness prior. But bizarrely, like when Finster talks about the Nasty Knight, he calls him Evil Knight, which that makes me go on and immediately second guess the name of that character, but I think it's just some problem with bizarrely having a actor not know the proper name of a monster, or the script couldn't remember exactly what the name was of that monster, and so they call it Evil Night here. It's very bizarre. And then also, they reuse the exact same footage that they had used in prior Nasty Night episode, but this time around, when Finster is talking about the Nasty Night getting the Sword of Darkness, there is no kind of footage that they can turn to that goes on and visually represents that. So, like, when Finster is talking about the Nasty Night and the Sword of Darkness and all of this stuff within this episode, there's no visuals to showcase that. So it's just like, why are they even turning to the Sentai footage? Why not just continue on to have Finster, like, just, like, kind of briefly just show a clip of prior episode of what the Nasty Night looked like, but then kind of just continue on with Finster's story without any Sentai footage that has any coverage of that. Like, I just thought that was really just kind of confusing. Of like, okay, like, why do we have this Sentai footage that helps with nothing of the story that Finster has? Moving on. So, Tommy, out of his spandex garb, is to teleport his way to the street, where Rita is to go on and tell Tommy to stay here for now until further notice, and to not to reveal his identity to anybody. So, as Rita leaves, Bulk and Skull are to notice Tommy within this alley, and quite interestingly enough, like, Tommy is wearing the exact same outfit that he was wearing the very first time we'd ever gone on and seen him. So I'm like, well, like, was this footage shot at that same time? And, like, eventually, uh, they used it later on. Like, I'm just a little, like, curious of how they approach this. But Vulcan Skull goes on to confront Tommy, noticing it's like, hey, it's that new kid again. So they make their way to Tommy, hoping that he is going to apologize for him kind of being a jerk to them earlier. And when Bulk and Skull get closer and closer to Tommy, they know that Tommy is a little bit different. It reminds me of Louis Tully from the original Ghostbusters movie, where Louis starts talking to the horse, and then the chariot driver is looking at Louis like, well, hey, like, if you want to ride, you better talk to me, not to him. And all of a sudden, Louis turns to the chariot driver, and Louis's eyes is glowing red. It's kind of like the same thing here, where it's like, okay, like, Bulk and Skull are looking within Tommy's eyes and realizing that the eyes are switching consistently green. And then the further and further that Bulk and Skull try to back away from Tommy, they regret that, because Tommy is to use his unusual powers to control Bulk and Skull to fall into this dumpster, and they end up immediately regretting, like, ever trying to confront Tommy, because of course they do. So, at the youth center, Jason is punching bagging himself into obsession. Zach is to be holding on to this punching bag and to be hearing Jason going on and being so focused of the Green Ranger wanting to get these hands. I can't wait to get my hands on the Green Ranger. And Jason's like, this is all I think about, like, just beating this guy, and, like, I don't know what it is. So they're also going on and, like, theorizing, like, well, like, is this Green Ranger, like, working with Rita because Zordon never mentioned him? And, like, they're trying to put the pieces together. And then also, like, well, did the Green Ranger have something to do with the command center's destruction? Like, they're trying to, like, figure it all out. and also like they don't know who exactly to blame in all this. So like really, with there being no answers from Zordon, who is to be the only person that read the script that day, yeah, like they are just trying to figure this out and like failing to put the pieces really together. So Billy and Trini are working on the communication wires, not having to have la, 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 not having time to fix anything else. So Kimberly meets up with Tommy, and Kim is to go on and ask Tommy. It's like, well, hey, like, what happened to you? Uh, when like I asked if you want to like meet up with us at the youth center, and Tommy just kind of fires back at Kimberly. It's like, well, hey, I'm a big boy and I can do whatever I want, and like why do you care that I didn't go to the youth center? And Kimberly's like, well, I was worried, and Tommy's like, oh, well, that's all you do. That's you're a worrier, and like a lot of stuff that just Tommy just fires back at Kimberly. It is so good, but I'm also to probably uh, reasonably kind of not say this the exact same word for word that Tommy and Kimberly go into here. But so, but then also like Tommy also throws in Kimberly's face. It's like, well, like, and Kimberly, like, you're not the center of the world here. Like, uh, you have to realize that. And so I don't know if Kimberly at all like asks anything of Tommy about Jason anywhere within here. I honestly have kind of forgot. But so let me just kind of move on, and eventually maybe I'll remember at some point when we get through a lot of these other notes if Kimberly does to have talked to uh, Tommy about Jason. Well, because at some point Tommy needs to meet up with Jason. So yeah, so like that dialogue hasn't happened yet because Jason hasn't disappeared. So my bases are covered there. So back with Rita at the Bendora Palace. Rita's next plan is to test Tommy to obtain the Sword of Darkness. Because, of course, we've already kind of said this anyways. So, Rita then again teleports Tommy and has him face off against these putties. And he easily wipes them out. Again, there are some kind of interesting kind of battles that Tommy has with the putties here. I think he ends up kind of just getting kicked in the chest and kind of thrown back. But yeah, like of course, like with Tommy fighting anybody in these early stages, like every bit of these fights just has to have something creative within it. Like the very first fight he had, like the putties just kind of punch him in the chest. So, but if anything here, within the secondary fight, it seems that in the first one, Tommy took out a lot more putties, where in the second fight, he just takes out three, and then the rest of the putties are all just kind of laying down and defeated. So, Tommy defeats the putties again, shocker, right? And then he goes on to obtain the Sword of Darkness, which just kind of appears in his hand as he has his hands up. So, Tommy claims to take out the Red Ranger next because that is to be uh, having Tommy go on to send Jason into the Dark Dimension. And so, yeah, so I'm kind of covering my bases here of trying to think what happens next. Because it has been some time since now watching all of these episodes and now talking about them. because I had gone on and like what I had done was on the previous video, I was like, okay, well, like I'll cover like all of these episodes and then do a separate video. But then on the actual day that I was to go on and watch like a bulk of Agreeing with Evil, like that was yesterday. And now this morning, I'm like, okay, now I have to go on and remember everything within these 5 episodes. So Jason meets up with Tommy at the school, and so Jason apologizes to Tommy uh, for not being able to make it to a sparring match between the two of them, and maybe to get a rain check or something along those lines, because Jason has other plans. And so Tommy is just like, well, okay, that's fine. And as Jason is to turn his back on Tommy, Tommy takes out his power coin and teleports Jason to the dark dimension. So Kimberly and Zach are questioning where Jason can be, as by the rad bug they are waiting for him. And that's what I guess we had to have assumed what Jason's plans were, to meet up with Kimberly and Zach to go to the command center. So Jason is in the dark dimension and he is trying to see if he can use his communicator to talk to the Rangers. Hey, like Zordon, Rangers, anybody. The communicator is not working, and so here's where Goldar comes in, and he tells Jason, like, your communicator will not work. And as well, also, Jason doesn't even realize that he does not have his morpher on him as he reaches for it, and Goldar is like, looking for this? Teasing and playing keep away with the morpher. So, back with Kimberly and Zach, they've waited far long enough for Jason, and so they decide to leave. And Kimberly's like, well, should we wait a little bit longer for Jason? And Zach is like, well, hey, like, Jason can take care of himself. We need to go. So, both Kimberly and Zach go into the rad bug, and Kim is upset about Tommy's attitude as of late, from a guy she barely knows, like a complete stranger. And at the command center, Billy seems to have restored power to the command center within reconnecting wires, and we just see a whole montage of just Biddy, uh, maybe it is Biddy, Billy, like fiddling with these wires, and we have to see like, man, they're like milking this out at this point. Like, man, I wish that Billy could have just hit one button and things could have just turned on, but like Billy is like really thumbing through all these wires. So so Kimberly and Zach are back at the command center because they took the rad bug to get there, and Kimberly notices the Green Ranger on the viewing globe, and Zach is focused on fighting the Green Ranger, but they're still a Ranger short. It's like, well, like, let's go on and like let's race off and let's fight this guy. But Kimberly's like, but Jason, and then Zach is like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, we don't have our leader here. So back at the dark dimension with Jason, Jason demands for his morpher, and the funny thing about that is like Goldar is like, well, like you're making demands now, but then later on you're gonna beg me. And then later he says like, well, like you know that there is no reason to beg, because you know whatever you beg for, I will never grant. Ah, like just a weird, goofy line of dialogue that is going on for Goldar to tell Jason at some points when they are like facing off against one another. So Jason goes on to kick Goldar, and Goldar picks up Jason and chokes him. And he's like, "Man, I could just easily end you right now." But like, Goldar wants to like basically, in a horrible way, like treat Jason as a pet. In all honesty, like Goldar is to be playing with his food before he eats it, and also Goldar is to tell Jason that that Jason is to be Goldar's reward for his loyal service to Rita. So, back with Zack at the command center, Zack tells Alpha to try and get a hold of Jason and to remember doing that as if Alpha all of a sudden has Alzheimer's. Um, and for also Zack to tell Alpha to tell Jason like where they are heading to face off against Tommy. So the Rangers morph and face off against the Green Ranger. So the Rangers try double team attacks, having no effect with those attacks on Tommy, as Tommy just counters all of it. Uh, Tommy uses the sort of darkness as some kind of just ground attack because we always have to have this kind of weird, unusual ground attack that ends up happening. If you go on and if you like play the mobile games from time to time, you'll see that ground attack happening, as it seems to be like a staple in some of the Rangers' attack moves. It's very weird to have a ground attack like that to be done, and then also like with the stuff that they were able to like pull off in this show is just astounding. How like how they did that whole ground attack thing. It's like, and how they've done it consistently throughout the show is like mind blowing about the effort that they went into like doing the show to make it so unique. So Tommy calls for the final blow as the Rangers call for their Zords. And this time around, when they put together the Megazord, uh, there is to be the 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 Mastodon like shield that would, of course, iconically be used in some photos somewhere. But yeah, so we get the debut of the Mastodon like face shield when Tommy goes on and he tries to make this energy blast attack. The shield ends up ricocheting the attack and ends up hitting onto Tommy, and so that goes on into seemingly having the Power Rangers just straight up happy that they had some way to like put a chink to the armor of the Green Ranger because he seems so unstoppable for so long. So back with Rita, Rita is looking at the fact of like, well, hey, like I can accept the Green Ranger kind of losing for once, and we'll focus on still having like Jason as a bargaining chip or as still somewhat of a victory. And so back at the command center, we again have to have the Rangers who are talking about how Jason is still not found yet. As Zordon is struggling to make his return, we see little blips and little flickers of Zordon on screen as he is to go on and at some points try and talk to the Rangers. So, back with Goldar and Jason, Goldar teases Jason's Morpher because, again, this is more keep away. And Goldar is to also tease Jason's end, and so that's how we end part 2. Going into part 3, Jason is to strategically realize that there is so much freaking fog in this dark dimension that is to be the one way to be able to hide from Goldar, because he is, of course, getting tired of trying to kick or try to be in this dark dimension for so long that he has used up so much energy, probably. So, Jason going on and disguising his body with fog, and probably the funny part about this is, like, man, like, I would like to know, like, Austin St. John, like, being around so much of that fog, like, how it felt. Like, did he cough? Like, did he really have problems, like, staying on the ground with all that fog being around him? I'm kind of curious. But so, because realistically, it's like, man, if you're surrounded by fog, like, what does that do to you? As well as also being in that environment for so long, with the fog being a place within that room. So, Rita calls upon Scorpina, and here's where we get the origin of this character that bizarrely has this just boulder rolling across this location, and then all of a sudden we have these two scorpions that are to be zoomed in on, and it's very confusing. But it's to tease to us that Scorpina is coming. We also have at some point where Babu is in the fear of the name of Scorpina, and shortly thereafter that, like, Scorpina then appears and goes, mm-hmm, and then walks away, and that's all we see of her, and it's very strange. But I probably already said that at some point. So, back at the command center, they lose Zordon's brief connection, and can't communicate with Jason, of course, because he's gone. So, uh, the Rangers decide that, like, well, hey, like, we need to figure out where Jason is. So, how about us as Rangers kind of split up to try and find him, because Billy is to go on and try to look him up through computers and say that they can't seem to find Jason anywhere. So they think that Jason is somehow still on Earth somewhere, so they just start to look for him. So Jason, after going on and resting upon this fog and having Goldar consistently use his sword to stab into the fog, not knowing where Jason is, like stabby, 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 like as if he is to hope that at some point to stab into Jason. Jason, like, comes from out of the smoke or out of the fog to then uh, to kick Goldar, saying that he has outsmarted Goldar, and kind of starts backing away from Goldar, and they shoot away from him. And they go back to Kimberly, who is now asking Ernie at the youth center if he's seen Jason. But Ernie's like, well, I haven't seen him in days. Bulk and Skull are asking, like, well, hey, we're willing to help, like, for a kiss. And Kimberly's like, oh, okay, sure, like, I'll go along with that. And Ernie's like, no, Kimberly, don't do it. And so Skull gets his lock slipped to smooch it up. And the further and further that Skull gets closer and closer, thinking that he's going to kiss upon Kimberly, he instead is going to lock lips with Bulk, mistakenly. And Bulk, now upset that Skull bizarrely had kissed him, kind of just pushes him aside, and then they walk off together. So, Kimberly eventually spots Tommy, and Kimberly asks Tommy if he saw Jason, and Tommy said, like, well, like, yeah, like, at school, like, I had been waiting for Jason and he never showed. And Kim is like, well, that's kind of unlike Jason to not to be a no show like that. And really thinking about it, like Kim and Zach at the Rad Bug were to go on and wait for Jason, and he no showed there. So like, how is that to be unlike Jason at this point? But still, uh, oh, here's where we get to where Tommy is to tell Kimberly, it's like, oh, well, you're a warrior, like that's what you do, and uh, and I had probably gotten things a little bit confused with the dialogue because Kim and Tommy, like, they talk to one another quite a bit of times within these episodes. So after Tommy goes on and delivers shade to Kimberly, he then walks off, and Kimberly talks to Zach that that Jason's last whereabouts had to have been with him meeting with Tommy, and there's something about it that just kind of like lingers of like, well, like Tommy has to know. There has to be a reason that like Tommy is not telling us the truth here. And so when figuring and putting the pieces together that Tommy had to have not told Kimberly the truth or not the full truth, Zach and Kimberly second guess what Tommy had said, or they're having suspicions that Tommy might have had something to do with Jason's disappearance. So, and I go on to say here that someone's been watching a little Murder She Wrote. So now, back at the Vandor Palace, Goldar is telling Rita that he feels that Kimberly may have uncovered Tommy's secret, that he may be evil, and Rita sends putties to distract Kimberly and Zach to then uh, not have them to be so focused on possibly getting to Tommy and finding out more answers. So when the putties come for Zach and Kimberly, while Tommy is still off walking a far distance away, as we see in the shot, we finally get to see like Zach and Kimberly like fight alone, and that gives more opportunity for us to see like these characters fight outside of their normal spandex suits. And the weird thing about this also is that I think the fights of these putties were kind of sped up because I'm like, okay, like Zach is moving way too quickly, but then also like Kimberly is kind of like moving somewhat fast. Um, so it's like, okay, like the fight here had to be weirdly sped up for time because if anything, like always, the problem of most of these episodes are to be the putty fights, how they are to be edited or they are to be like treated as a raw deal because I guess the people who go on to put together or edit this show just immediately think, oh yeah, like nobody really cares about the putty fights. All anyone really cares about is what else is going on in the story. So if you can go on and have a weird, goofy, seizure edit of the Power Rangers episode via the putty fights, it doesn't really matter, right? So, uh, but if anything, still like the whole matter of contention that Zach and Kimberly have is like, well, like the putties didn't chase after Tommy because again, he's like a million miles away. Like, look at the footage, Tommy and Zach. Like, do you think the putties would go on and want to chase after Tommy from that distance? I don't think so. So Rita, after seeing Tommy's glowing eyes, Rita is telling Tommy it's time. And the Green Ranger goes to the Dark Dimension to fight Jason. I guess in my notes I said the word fight Tommy, but the Green Ranger is going to fight himself? No. Um, the Green Ranger is going off to face off against Jason. And so the Green Ranger just kind of pushes Goldar to the side, and then like Tommy and Jason have this bit of dialogue, this line of dialogue between one another. And it is kind of hilarious how eventually when Tommy and Jason like have these moments of being in this dark dimension together, and how the Green Ranger is kind of savoring every moment and wanting to go on and uh, kind of talk Jason to death. We really have by the end of this whole part here where Jason eventually ends up teleporting away, and then Goldar ridicules Tommy for like taking up so much time when he could have ended Jason so easily. I'm like, wait a minute, like that's like the pot calling the kettle black. Like Goldar, look, he took like forever to play keep away and tease Jason, and Goldar had all the time in the world to just choke and kill and whatever Jason, but he never pulled the trigger. He just decided like, well, like I'm just gonna have all the time in the world to play with Jason, and then when the green, so like, but Goldar always likes to be like the bestest of henchmen, and also like when something goes wrong, like he always knows who to throw under the bus besides like really just blaming himself. But anyways, moving on. So Jason is angry that the Green Ranger wears the same costume and is similar to a Power Ranger but isn't working for Zordon. The Green Ranger admits that he's Rita's Power Ranger. And so da, da, da. Oh, I so also here's where the line of dialogue is roughly be uh when Golar is first talking with Jason before he ends up getting interrupted by Tommy. Like here's where Goldar mentions the whole about like, well, uh like you'll never beg now. Like this is where like the weird line of dialogue goes into here. Because all of his begging will be ignored. But if anything, back to the command center. So at this point, uh, we're really at some dialogue, just drinking game things happening here because I can't take the if it's not always Jason, it's once for Zordon or uh, sometimes for the Green Ranger. Oh, okay. So here's what I was trying to get at my notes. So yeah, so at this point, here's where we've gone on to state things far too often with the Rangers talking about their goals. That is like, well, where is Jason? Where is Zordon? Like, who is this Green Ranger guy? And they've repeated that like such a broken record fashion that yeah, like it just becomes that like you have to just kind of create some kind of game out of this whole part of Power Rangers because of how often uh, you're to almost want to put a counter up through these episodes to have a bingo card or some kind of goofy something to get you through these episodes, because again, the early parts of this is done as a weekly episodic thing instead of a streaming service binge watch. So so Billy then goes on is to ask Alpha about how soon they will be able to bring back Zordon, and Alpha is to mention, like, well, within the next 15 minutes, they will be able to find Zordon. And when looking at the timestamp of the video, I'm like, so are they going to find Zordon by the end of this episode? That's what I kind of felt. So Billy was able to fix the communicator, so they hope that at this point that they can finally be able to teleport Jason back to the command center now that the communicators are working. So they can finally, where is Waldo, find Jason. Jason spent a number of episodes saying, I can't wait to get my hands on the Green Ranger. Fast forward to now, when he's in the dark dimension, face to face with Tommy, that Jason is looking at the Green Ranger and saying, I don't want to fight you. Contradictory again. So it is opposite dialogue world in the dark dimension. Also, Green Ranger, what's preventing you from working with Zordon? Is it that Rita has really good stock options, healthcare? Does Rita have a 401k? That's what I kind of want to get into. Is it just like, what does Rita have that Zordon doesn't? Um, like, that was kind of the joke at this point that I just wanted to get to. Um, so Tommy says that Zordon will be a memory, uh, but not X number of minutes from now, because maybe uh, Zordon will eventually come back, because Alpha had gone on to tell us that Zordon will be back in 15 some odd minutes. So Tommy is going to have to make his way back to the command center to, again, uh, put the boots to Zordon to hope that he can never come back. But it seems that there isn't always an easy way for the Rangers to continue to get Zordon. And I'm looking at you once and always. Why is it that, like, in these episodes, like, it is so easy to get, like, Zordon back numerous times over, but then once and always Billy is just like, man, I've been trying and it's just not working, and like, I can't figure it out. And it's like, man, like, Alpha had gone on to do it numerous times over in the early parts of this episode, and we really have to say that, like, advances in technology and any number of things, like, should make it even easier to have found Zordon. Why is it so hard in Once and Always to get Zordon back? Because we have to assume that really Zordon at this point is really and truly gone, and we have to accept that fact. But anyways, so the fight between Jason and Tommy leads to Jason being on the ground and Tommy putting his foot over Jason's arm as Jason is so desperately wanting to cling to his morpher, and Jason is to have his hand just so close to the morpher, like he can taste it, or he's just tasting the fog because, like, that's all that's really surrounding him. So, uh, now with Babu and Squad, here's where they're going on and they're talking about Scorpina and they remember horror stories about her, and Rita is to even remember that she was to want to call upon Scorpina because uh, she still has the Green Ranger as her trump card. So here's where we get the Boulder and the Scorpion, and this weird debut makes no sense. Uh, and here's where Scorpina does arrive, and she and leaves. Back to the command center. Billy and Alpha have locked on uh, Zordon. Or no, wait. Back to the command center. Billy and Alpha seem to have figured out where he who is always named is to be, and wants the Rangers to cross their fingers, hoping that they can teleport Jason out of the dark dimension. So, as Tommy is to now be so close to having the Sword of Darkness pierce into Jason, we have this moment where Tommy is to ask Jason, it's like, well, hey, do you like my sword? I'm like, you know what? No, like, I don't really like the Sword of Darkness, like, nearly as good as, like, the Dragon Dagger, or also, like, I really don't quite like the Sword of Darkness compared to, like, the Saba sword. Clearly, yeah, like, the Sword of Darkness, maybe a 2 out of 10. Like, so, uh, back with Alpha. Alpha is stressed, and Billy ends up going on to teleport Jason out of the dark dimension. Before Tommy delivers a murderous blow to Jason with his sword. So, Goldar scolds the Green Ranger for not having enough time. Uh, and like I've kind of already mentioned this before, the whole pot calling the kettle black situation. And but also like mentioning how again villains just love to talk. So Goldar at this point disappointed that Tommy did not go on and end Jason. Goldar then leaves Tommy in the dark dimension for now to think about what he did. He's in timeout. So Jason talks about everything leading up to how he got back because the rest of the actors barely read the script that day. Jason explains meeting up with Tommy, proving Tommy lied to the other Rangers, appearing in front of Goldar with Morpher out of hand, and the Green Ranger being a mean Morphin lover. So let's move on to the next bit of notes. So, the viewing globe. The viewing globe, as the alarm goes off, Scorpina is wreaking havoc amongst the town, forcing the Rangers to morph out to face her. Maybe she will them to death. She will that's what she'll do. So weirdly enough, at this point in time, we are thinking that Scorpina may not have much of any dialogue here. But I was like, wait a minute, like Scorpina talks? So Scorpina goes on and she calls for the putties to attack the Rangers, and Rita and Goldar watch along and say Scorpina is outnumbered. If only there was a Goldar or a certain colored Ranger that could even the odds, which it seems that they eventually will follow up with. So, weirdly enough, here, as the Rangers are facing off against Scorpina, now that there seems to be another female character on the villain side, Rita is going on and putting makeup upon her face and is like kind of recreating the whole like mirror mirror who's the prettiest one of them all kind of situations between her and Scorpina as Goldar and Scorpina fight over who was actually on the field of battle when Scorpina comes back from fighting the Rangers. At this point, I'm rooting for the villains. Go, Rita, go! that's my real true thoughts about like. It seems that the villains technically have some momentum, so I want them to keep that. Uh, and then also like let's reflect still on the fact that like beyond at some point the Green Ranger's shortcomings, like he really still has uh done very well. But Scorpina is the new toy that they want to kind of play with. So that is the reason why finally, like Scorpina is to be kind of put in place here, and Tommy is to just kind of be shelved for the moment. So, but then we also have the instant classic, which is to be Goldar. So, uh, Rita thinks about the whole eclipsing the sun plan. Uh, that will lessen the solar power of the Megazord because I guess the Dino Megazord runs on solar power. Didn't know that. Like I don't know why that Rita realizes this now and implements this now. Like what she was what she was to go on and while the Megazord was to have fought, like was she assessing that? Was it just like a wild uh like possible shot in the dark is like, well, maybe the Megazord runs on solar power. Because also at some point the Megazord does fight underwater, like the Megazord does fight in all these kind of other situations that the solar power isn't present, but I guess that's just me just kind of thinking things through. So Tommy is in the dark dimension and Tommy is shadowboxing or shadow fighting ghosts. And so Tommy is, of course, wanting to prove himself, but he is to be told to be patient. At the command center, now that Jason is back, the hope is that the command center is powerful enough to find another. Because we have to play this Where's Waldo's game of like, okay, now that Jason's back, now we have to find Zordon. So Alpha thinks that they have a lock on Zordon, and Zordon flickers back into frame, and as Jason demands Alpha to do something, to where if I were Alpha, I'm like, I'm gonna hit all the buttons. I'm just gonna hit everything. I'm just gonna go for it all. So, and then later on, when Zordon still again is kind of flickering or lost, like I was thinking, like man, like Alpha's gonna have to find buttons to then hit. So the command center isn't powerful enough because it seems that uh, it seems to uh, at this point in time like have to have Billy come up with uh, ways to still connect wires together and figure things out. There's a troubleshooting going on with Billy where he figures out how to convert the power, and eventually, I guess, it makes him even the more better somewhere down the road when other power chambers and other things kind of come up where Billy can figure out how within the technology to help the Rangers in the later seasons with Zeo because he won't be a Ranger then. So uh, Rita goes on to make Goldar grow and have him wreak havoc upon a Japanese town. So I think with the Rangers now, like it kind of gets to the point to where we're desperately asking Zordon, "Can you hear me?" Uh, because the Rangers are still desperate to get answers from Zordon, but he's not there. So, but the Rangers are looking on at the viewing globe, and of course, seeing Goldar, and so it is kind of funny because like we have Zach who's saying like, "Man, like Goldar's going off the deep end." And in my brain, I'm just like, yeah, like Goldar's jumping the shark. He's like the Fonz. So we again, by this being the tail end of this episode, we have to have all of these goofy one-liners to end the episode, and then we have to again tell you to be continued. I'm like, don't be too continuing me, show. I can watch this episodes however I want to. So uh this moves us on to part 4. So now that Goldar is still free reigning over a Japanese town, and the Rangers are doing nothing more than playing the one-liner game. The Rangers try to morph, and then all of a sudden their morphers spark out, and they're like, okay, why did that happen? So the Morphin grid, as well as also the command center, is draining way too much power into finding Zordon that no other power seems to be possible at this point to tap into. So the Rangers realize that they now can't morph as they're just watching the carnage of Goldar again going through this city. Uh, so Squat is to go on and remind us of the Eclipse plan that Rita has in place, but it's still going to be forever from now for that to actually come to full fruition. So Finster seems to be actually much more upset now that that he doesn't have to create a monster for him to have more dialogue for this week. And the Green Ranger needs more dialogue because really the Green Ranger needs more dialogue for this week. So the Green Ranger is still fighting ghosts in the dark dimension, metaphorically, not literally, uh, and is tired of being all talk and wants action as Goldar continues to ruin Japanese real estate. The Ranger is now waiting in the command center, playing the waiting game. Billy connects more wires, red, green, blue, blue, And so after Billy is to figure out how to convert the power, the Rangers go on to Morph to face Putties again, because of course they do. So, and the Scorpion King is back. If you don't get that joke, so we have Scorpina come in, and the first thing that we see is the Rock and the Scorpion, and then we see Scorpina, and so like I was making a Dwayne the Rock Johnson joke because eventually the Rock eventually becomes the Scorpion King, so that's that joke there for those of you that weren't in the know. So Scorpina stings the Rangers with a boomerang attack, which I thought was really cool. Like she whips this weapon and it kind of ricochets and hits all the Rangers. So Billy telling Jason they need to make other tactics or other plans. I'm hoping that they finally just confuse the monsters. Or maybe they get a dance number. Wouldn't it be exciting, right? So Alpha, back at the command center, is seemingly able to have some kind of dialogue between Alpha and Zordon because it seems that he's flickering back. So Zordon is to mention the exact coordinates that Alpha needs, which I believe is U9, as it's kind of muttered, and then Alpha repeats it. So that ends up helping Alpha track Zordon down. So at the U Center, Earthy, Ernie fears for everyone's safety instead of making profit and pleads for everyone to evacuate the youth center before the building collapses. Interestingly enough, like Ernie goes on to say that the building is going to collapse, but then he ends up returning shortly thereafter back to the youth center to like watch the television. And it seems that people are back in the youth center. But I'm like, wasn't that building going to collapse at some point? Like, shouldn't you go on and be like finicky whether you should return to the youth center? That's just me. Um, Bulk wants to finish his ice cream, but then there, of course, ends up being a chunk of the building that ends up falling right in front of him. And at this point, I wanted to go on because I thought it would be funny. Um, so Bulk and Skull are trying to eat this ice cream. This building piece falls down on them. I'm like, I will remember you. Memorial of Bulk and Skull. They are dead now. No, like, if anybody knows Bulk and Skull, you know that they will definitely stick around till at least the Samurai season. So, but I still thought that I still thought like you can go on and make some goofy things with just kind of a memorial of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or just seasons of at some point characters dying. And I thought it would just kind of continue at some point through the talking of these reviews. So Bulk and Skull decide the best, and I mean the best strategy is to jump on this bus because it is the quickest way out of town. And I am like, Bulk and Skull, you decide a bus is the quickest way out of town. Do you realize how slow a bus is? You could have chosen any other way to get out of town. You could have walked, you could have ran, you could have uh, found any number of other ways of transportation that would have been a heck of a lot faster, but you chose a bus. Okay, here. So Rita wants finally Goldar to stop messing around because we can't have too many uh, to be continued screens with Goldar destroying Japanese towns because there will be none of them left at this point. So Alpha, getting close to pinpointing Zordon, uh, don't bust that nut yet, folks. And again, Green Ranger wants to speak or sneak into the command center because he left his mixtape Volume 1 disc in Alpha's back and wants to get it back because he only wanted Alpha to just borrow this mixtape. So Tommy again turns off Alpha by reaching for something in Alpha's back. I'm like, you know what, Alpha? Like, can you not have something on your body that turns yourself off? Come on, Alpha. Like, get some real defensive measures, like how you had previously, where you took out all of those putties so easily. So, back with Goldar, um, Goldar stabs into the ground while uh, claiming to win. Uh, Skull, without a license, drives a bus uh, pretty well, but not uh, being far enough away from Goldar, as Bulk is telling Skull, it's like, well, hey, like that guy's gaining on us. So Goldar goes on and grabs the bus, and Goldar is now playing with the bus. So the Rangers, of course, at this point in time, are to have morphed and are fighting, have it fighting with Goldar being giant at this point, and so I kind of have to go back into like seeing some things that are happening here because I got a little confused about what was going on. So the Rangers are there with Goldar being giant, and Goldar is consistently stabbing into the ground, and the Rangers are having to dodge this sword being placed on the ground, and we have Goldar take this bus, and he is to bargain uh, this bus with Bulk and Skull within it for the Rangers' surrender. And when it seems that the Rangers won't give up, Goldar goes to the beach in hopes that uh, the Skull and Bulk bus will eventually be like put at risk by these putties, and Squat and Babu trying to push it over to then have it more of a reason for the Power Rangers to surrender, but they won't. So, uh, back at the command center, the Green Ranger is a chatty Cathy, and at this point, the only one he has left to talk to is a barely there Zordon. So, Tommy is saying to Zordon, uh, that Zordon will be sent to another dimension where he will be lost forever. Zordon, I will remember you. Rangers teleport to the beach, Bulk and Skull trying to leave the bus, but notice Putty's right outside the bus, and so Bulk ends up telling Skull that they are going to be history, and so Skull's like, we're going to be legends, and Bulk is like, no, we're going to be dead, and they're like, ah! Like we've already so far had so many times. Okay. So, Bulk and Skull are screaming, as well as also we've had screaming in past episodes between the Billy and Kim body swapping episode, and also having Bulk and Skull who had body swapped, and they were like, ah, like we've just had quite a bit of screaming at this point, and then also we even have to continue more with Bulk and Skull screaming for their lives. So with this possibly being the end of Bulk and Skull within this bus, like in my mind, I was just like, I will samurai season you. Because of course we have to realize that the Power Rangers Samurai season was really just the last of us being able to actually have like a bulk or skull within a Power Ranger show, because then after that, like there really wasn't a bulk and skull that seemed to appear within other things. And then even in Power Rangers Samurai, we just had Spike instead of really Skull, which again, I think we did have Skull come back briefly on that show to kind of tell us like where that character has been, but still. But moving on. Bulk ends up telling Skull to stop screaming, stop moving, stop breathing, and even wanting their mommies. Ranger's trying to get to the bus, but is stopped by Goldar's sword. The Rangers never learn. Because, yeah, like, Goldar keeps stabbing with his sword to prevent the Rangers from getting to this bus. So, Tommy wants to finally finish his dialogue and job to end Zordon forever before In Space gets the chance to. Alpha awakens to force field Tommy, so they do have countermeasures in the command center that goes on and stops an evil ranger like this from continuing to try to do what Tommy tries to have gone on and do. But like, I guess Alpha just wasn't quick enough to be able to put in countermeasures like Alpha was able to now with this whole force field thing around Tommy. So at this point, I am just looking at Ivan Ooze and just like, where's my autograph book? Because again, you have to be reminded that Ivan Ooze is still broken to the command center. But anyways, so it's like, why didn't they have countermeasures for Ivan Ooze? I don't know. Anyways, mood point. So, but Zordon failing to reconnect as Tommy feels he's won forever. The Rangers end up calling for the Zords finally to put the plan in place about the whole eclipse thing that Rita had the long game planned for, that they took 2 episodes to talk about and now is finally happening. So the Dino Megazord catches the bus in midair and then continues on to fight against Goldar. Billy notices the eclipse. He reads, I guess he was the one to have read the script that day, but it is kind of weird because when the Rangers are talking in the Megazord, I don't think they know how percentages work. So, Scorpina grows large and ugly, and within the Megazord, the Rangers are talking, and so as the eclipse moves on to block the solar power going to the Megazord, the Power Rangers say that they're down to 25% power down, but then Jason says that they're at 50% power, and then at some point they then say, well, like the power is almost out. And again, I'm just like, wait a minute. Like, they went from 25 to then 50 to then seemingly almost next to nothing. what percentage is it? Like, this seems like Scott Steiner math. It's like 33 1% a quarter. uh, 33 1/4 will I will kick your butt, and this that. So if you guys don't know the one Scott Steiner promo where he talks about math, man, is that just something to behold. But yeah, but looking at how they're talking about percentages, like this makes no sense here. So so back with Alpha. Alpha desperately hitting all the buttons to get Zordon back. Tommy trying to convince Alpha all is lost. Jason calls for the Megazord to get to have hopes that maybe the sword may have some ability to give the Megazord power, I think is what he says. Um, I am not quite sure exactly how they phrase it in the episode, but it's fairly weird. So, uh, Alpha needs to find more buttons. Tommy complains that Alpha can't make anything work. Alpha, seeing the Green Ranger as a truly evil character, wants to know his identity. And when Alpha is to finally want to go on and reveal who the Green Ranger is, Rita's like, "Oh no, 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 you don't." And Rita ends up teleporting the Green Ranger away by using spells. So Alpha doesn't find the identity of the Green Ranger. So uh, so Tommy is finally to be taken away from the command center to finally have him be involved in the fight. But instead of having him call upon the Dragon Zord, because I guess within the show they just didn't have the Dragon Zord available yet, they went on and they just bizarrely decided to just make the Green Ranger giant, which makes no sense because they don't do that in the future. Just kind of seemed weird. But then also there is at one point where in Power Rangers Zeo, like King Mondo becomes giant, and it seems that the Power Rangers, instead of going on and getting into their Zords, just decides like, well, how about we all just become giant? And so, like, really, the fight between the Rangers and King Mondo, as them both just being giant, just makes no sense. But like, that's what they did in a Power Rangers Zeo episode. I don't know why. So, uh, but recently, like throwing Tommy into the field, I'm like, well, like there's already two monsters that the Megazord is fighting off against, and the Megazord is also weak. So, what makes adding Tommy into the fold like gonna change anything? Like, but anyways, so uh, the Rangers don't have power to fight um Scorpina uses her like scorpion tail and kind of whips the Rangers with this. Uh, both Goldar and the Green Ranger take their Sword of Darkness and Goldar's sword, and they kind of exit together, and they have this energy blast that hits the Megazord, and this ends up destroying the Megazord, forcing all of the Zords to go back into hibernation because they've all been really just uh, really like annihilated at this point. And for how I've gone on and seen in like season finales where eventually the Zords would get destroyed and whatever, like I am looking at like where is Ninjor now? To give the Rangers a new power. Because, of course, if you realize at some point, when the Rangers need a new thing of power, like the next person they end up looking into for this show is Ninjor. So, but I'm also like, well, Ninjor is not in this season. So Rangers forced back now to command center because they have nowhere else to go. Uh, at this point, the luck of them being able to get back Zordon is less than 10% by Billy's assessment. So here's where Jason has this speech about the smallest chance of victory is enough to keep on fighting, that we can't give up, that the world needs the Rangers, or Japanese footage does at least. uh, so the Green Ranger was Rita's best idea, uh, and the Green Ranger was Rita's trump card, as I think Zach goes on and explains here. So, since Tommy was to arrive back at the command center, they had put in place measures to be able to uh, go on to figure out the Green Ranger's identity by the fact of him being in this environment and going on to um, logically to have I guess his presence there like had the computers be able to uh, figure out his identity, I guess. So as the viewing globe is going on to kind of re uh, assess a visual of what this Green Ranger would look outside its spandex costume, it ends up going on to as the kind of T pose person is to turn, the Rangers all find out that it's Tommy. And they are all shocked. So, this, of course, ends up being again another to be concluded to go into episode 5. So, so by the end of episode 4, we are all shocked that the Rangers finally know who Tommy is, but we knew all along. So, part 5. So Kimberly still can't believe it's Tommy because she didn't read a good chunk of any portion of any of the other scripts, I guess. So Kimberly is desperately pleading that there must be some kind of mistake. Did she not remember episodes where Tommy was uh, was like ripping into her about worrying and Kim not being the center of attention? Uh, like that's just called being a prick. And Tommy had been a prick for I don't know how long now, out of anybody else that they are to know. But everyone is going on and second guessing the computer as if they know Tommy like he's their old friend. And again, Tommy is a stranger to them. And so Zach goes on to say, how come Tommy did this to us? Because he was under a spell. So the plan is to break that spell now, that they are to figure out that Tommy's to be evil. Rita and the rest of her henchmen are all at their little palace, and they're drinking alcohol. They're drinking martinis, obviously. They're celebrating as Alpha is freaking out at the possibilities of Rita's next plan. Um, the Rangers' plan is to find Tommy while Alpha is to go on and find Zordon. So, again, more Where's Waldo? So at the youth center, uh, here's where I have the problem with okay, like everybody's back to the youth center, and didn't episodes prior the youth center like almost like collapse? But I guess maybe they fixed something during that time of things happening. So, but I was just kind of curious how really safe this youth center actually is. So Ernie is watching the news of the destruction, and he's just like, "Oh man, like how could this have happened?" Bulk and Skull want uh, people to thank them for just being a part of being in danger amidst that whole bus thing, and they're also like hoping that they could be on TV. And so Kimberly looks at Bulk and Skull. It's just like, God, you guys are so stupid. So Kimberly looks at Ernie and is to ask about Tommy. So, uh, Kimberly goes on and finds that Tommy's working out and he's in this seated chest press machine. And I've already talked about this, but let's talk about this here. So, the equipment from episode to episode of the youth center is just very bizarre. Like, uh, like a lot of times it seems that there is to be no leg day in the youth center, besides just kind of aerobics or hit cardio, which still isn't quite leg day. But then also, like, we go from episode to episode to episode so far, and we have a bench press, we have a sitting chest press, we have a rope in one episode, we have a punching bag in two others. Like, where does all of this equipment go? How does Ernie have the money when he is kind of giving away half of his food uh, to be able to afford all of this equipment? I'm just a little confused. But then also, there's to be so many certain events that are going on in the youth center. Like, again, like, how do they have the money for all of these things? So, but also like the seated chest press does the exact same thing as the bench press anyways. It works the same muscles, and we're just seeing Tommy that is using this bench press, and he's trying as much as possible to lift this seated bench press like angrily. He's like, oh yeah. So but also, I can probably understand why, like, Tommy isn't bench pressing, because Tommy's arms is a lot longer than, let's just say, Jason's, because Tommy is taller, and so hence why he needs the seated bench press machine. And then also, like, it's better for doing a number of takes that are going on within the scene, obviously, because Tommy's actually going to have dialogue with Kimberly here. So Kimberly talks to Tommy and she tells Tommy, it's like, well, hey, I know who you are. I know that you're the Green Ranger. And Kimberly wants to help Tommy. And Tommy is to just warn Kimberly of his future victory and also uh like long live my Empress Rita, and like Tommy will not be swayed by Kimberly, even though maybe he's looking at her like, I want me some of that. So Rita then finally calls for the Dragon Zord on an episode far too late. She should have called the Dragon Zord to appear for there to be both Dragon Zord and Scorpina and Goldar on the field, and that would have made a heck of a lot more sense. So when you finally see the Dragon Zord and it's starting to wreak havoc around this uh, this patch of land, and it's like ripping uh, the tube thing out and and chomping into it. Like, I feel that this footage is like repetitively used throughout the seasons somewhere, and like, I get it. There's probably only so much footage of this Dragon Zord, but again, like, it seems that when I look at other episodes, I am to be very familiar of like, oh yeah, like I've seen this footage before, and here's where I've seen it from. So, uh, Tommy says Dragon Zord and jumps onto the head of it, and then we take a shot from the distance with the Dragon Zord now having a seemingly action figure on the top of its head. It's very weird, but we end up using this visual on the uh, on the intro for the show. I guess because they had no other footage to pull from. So, uh, back to the command center. So, Alpha is again trying to figure out where Zordon is, and Alpha's hoping that there could be some dimensional files that will help her find Zordon. And I'm getting once and always flashbacks because again, I'm like, why couldn't have Billy gone on to like try to figure out some kind of like dimensional files and so on and so forth. And then also with like Zordon consistently getting to be gone or disappearing, I'm just like, so Kimberly meets up with the Rangers and talks and talks to them about her conversation with Tommy. And they put the pieces into place about Tommy acting strange and not being attacked by the putties earlier. So so they like if they weren't thinking or had second guesses that Tommy was the Green Ranger, they're trying to come up with some conclusions. So Trini goes on and runs into frame, and she's telling the Rangers, via what she found out, that there is a crisis going on. So the Rangers decide to morph. So the Rangers all appear at this one uh, part of town, and so they go on to like jump, and they jump on top of this building, and Tommy then arrives, and he jumps from or la 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 la. So the Rangers jump to one part of the building, and so Tommy, since on his Dragon Zord, jumps from the Dragon Zord to a higher building, and here, of course, is where we get the first appearance of the Dragon Dagger, where we go on and we have Jason who talks about it and says that it is a flute. So, which I'm like, give me more Dragon Flute. Uh, the dragon, from its fingertips, is to fire these blasts, and it's to cause destruction. Alpha finally finds Zordon, and Alpha or Zordon has to explain to Alpha Tommy's true weakness, destroying the Sword of Darkness because these guys didn't know what the Sword of Darkness really was, I guess. So the Rangers all start to look at their belt buckle or their dino bucklers, and they realize that each one of their belts start to glow in color. And so they then realize that since their belts are really glowing, that Zordon has to be back. So the Rangers are teleported to their Zords. Uh, Jason pleads for Tommy to stop as so when the Megazord goes into facing off against the Dragon Zord, uh, the Dino Megazord ends up like military pressing, but then kind of like swings. Like the Megazord is like carrying the Dragon Zord, and while it's like pressing it, like it's spinning and then throwing it. And we have Jason that's pleading for Tommy to stop, and bizarrely, there's to be a voice that says "No way," and it's supposed to sound like Tommy, but like it's obviously not Tommy. Like I think they end up having to use some person that sounded like Tommy bizarrely there. So Jason claims the need to destroy his uh or Jason claims that he needs to destroy the Dragon Zord to save Tommy, but then turns around and Jason like goes flying out of the Megazord to face off against Tommy. So I'm like, okay, like what was Jason saying here? So Jason and Tommy face off, and Tommy uses his dragon flute as an attack that blasts out these green energy lights to then have Jason try to dodge these attacks. And uh, so the further and further, there are some cool, interesting attacks here. We then also have Jason, who is to try to go on and use his sword, and his sword lights up, and he tosses this uh, to Tommy, and it hits Tommy, and then I think this leads to Tommy kind of dropping both his Dragon Dagger and Sword of Darkness, and then Jason grabs his Blade Blaster and shoots the Sword of Darkness, which then destroys the sword. So, right after that, like, since now Tommy seems to no longer be evil, and both Jason and Tommy now powered down, Jason tries to talk to Tommy. So Tommy is free and feels confused. Jason convinces Tommy whatever he did wasn't him, and he has the power now, and he can join the Power Rangers regardless of what he did. Tommy and Jason shake hands. Zordon claims history is in the making. Tommy powers up the Dragon Zord to see a new Megazord formation, which is to be the Dragon Zord fighting mode, which is to be like the new setup for like, okay, now that they have the Dragon Zord, they're going to combine it with all the other Zords besides the Tyrannosaurus Rex one, and kind of create this whole new Zord that eventually they'll go on to use against Eval. So, uh, Rita is upset that the Power Rangers won, and then also that she's to lose this sixth Ranger. We even also have at a point where Rita is to take her uh, her staff and just clock Goldar, Squat, and Babu, and we see that more than once being used. Within, I think, around here, and then also within the Dark Warrior episode. So back to the command center. Zordon raises the Rangers, or Zordon praises the Rangers because of the odds stacked against them, but they never gave up. Trini brings up like, well, hey, like, but what about Alpha? Like, we should definitely give Alpha praise. And Zordon is like, well, yeah, like with me gone, like Alpha really did step up and was a really good mentor to the Rangers. And then so Zordon, because realizing that Tommy is to be the sixth Ranger, he has to go on and explain the rules and regulations like he had gone on to explain to the Rangers in the pilot, that they should not reveal their secret identities and this and that. Everything, of course, to be very repetitive to the pilot. And Billy goes on and gives Tommy a communicator. And so here's where we go on and wrap up this episode with all the Rangers putting their hands in, and then like huzzah, and then the end of the episode. So with that said, man, I probably should have just gone on, and I probably should have taken this clip and just fused it with the other. Because it only would have been another 30 minutes, and I didn't realize that. But man, I kind of zoomed through this episode, or these episodes, a little bit faster than I would have thought. So, with that said, I'm just going to get the heck out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about these episodes. And maybe I'll have to go on and adjust what I'm going to have to do, because maybe I'll just put the 3-hour one and this extra just 30-minute thing, just smash it together, and then realize what a mistake that I've done with putting all of that together. So, with that said, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.